All right, so very good morning, and once again, warm welcome to online learning portal of Drishti IAS. And in today's segment, we are going to discuss about the PYQ previous year question, especially of the recent exam of UPSC Mains, which had been concluded. And here we'll take a discussion on Indian polity and the Constitution part, that is paper 2. And as usual, this year also, questions worth more than 100 marks, we can say, were asked from the polity segment. So in the last couple of years, if we see, then multiple times there were, the questions worth 100 and 100 plus marks were asked from the polity segment. And overall paper, if we look into those students who had appeared for the exam, they might have realized that the questions were generally from basic to moderate level. Good thing about this year, some of the questions were related with the static part, some were with the conceptual, and one or two bits were there as far as relating it with the current affairs is concerned. So not very difficult, ideally speaking. And this paper was comprised of the questions related with IR also, and the questions related with the social justice part and governance also, definitely, which would be discussed by our respected team members from time to time. In today's segment, I'll be discussing with the polity paper, that is the questions which are specifically from the polity and constitution. There were certainly some questions which had a overlapping with the social justice also. So that part will be taken care in social justice. If they have some connotation with the IR, they will be taken in IR segment. And if they have a connotation with the governance part, they will be taken up in the governance segment. So let's look at the discussion. And when we talk about the UPSC mains discussion, year-wise, we can say the trend for the UPSC question paper you can look into. So this year also, we can say roughly we have got around 90 marks worth question, filtering out those questions which are the part of the social justice and the governance, like representation of the women's in the higher judiciary or judiciary is concerned. That part we have taken into the social justice, though that is also clubbed, or that can also be clubbed with the part and parcel of the polity and constitution. Similarly, the governance related question, the direct question related with the e-governance, and then probably the question related with the pressure groups, right, civil society. These questions also can be clubbed in polity and governance part, or the bit of overlapping with the social justice part. So while filtering out the questions, we have clubbed them specific area wise so that you can get the benefit of discussion related with those questions also in the various segment which would be dealt by other esteemed faculty members. So year wise, if you see 110 last year, 115 or 125, so we can say almost 45 to 50% of the questions would be definitely from polity and constitution whenever we talk about the paper 2. And as I told you, this year we had the questions which were related with the static part, especially the constitution and the features and provisions, and 2 questions worth 25 marks, and then legislature and RPA, directly or indirectly 3 questions, and then constitutional terms and the basic constitutional laws, morality, etc. On that also there were questions. So if somebody who had done a thorough preparation, especially the core areas of the polity, then that student would be definitely at a better position to handle these questions rather than those who just relied on Lakshmikant, or we can say just relied on the superficial reading. For them, it might have been reached to difficult level. Otherwise, overall questions, very shortly when we see, they can be, placed on a platform that is beginning from the basic level to, we can say, the moderate level of difficulty. This year paper, we cannot say that it was too difficult or something like that, or extreme difficulty was there. No, not at all. So as per my analysis, I found that there might be some trickiness in the paper, especially related with the conceptual clarity. And if you have attended the sessions properly, if you have read it thoroughly, and you are good at the concept part, then I think it would not be a problem for you to ride over these questions. So let's begin our discussion without wasting the time. let's open the house for the question. So when we talk about question in this series, we are going to discuss the couple of questions which were asked this year and how to have a good answer for them. Especially this discussion would be beneficial obviously for the students who are preparing for next exam, because the one who had already wrote this, they know that they can't change it, but at least they will get a glimpses of what could have been, the possible points which might have been there, or it should have been reflected in your answer, so that can help in convincing the examiner for fetching some extra marks. So predominantly we know that we cannot change what we wrote earlier, but at least a sense of satisfaction would be there by understanding a sort of, we can say, a model answer or an approach to these kind of questions. And especially this is going to be beneficial for the other set of student fraternity which is aspiring to appear for the next year mains. At least they'll be able to know the gray areas, they'll be able to know how to handle these kind of questions and so on when we go through this particular discussion. So now let's start with the first one, and the first question itself had started or being asked from the so-called the basic concept what we actually deal to begin our classes. And if one had a basic understanding of those basic concepts, interconnecting linkages, right, some basic terminologies in the form of nation, state, government, population, territory, or constitution, constitutionalism, and so on, for them it would be a easy cakewalk to write this question, because this question I'll park it somewhat close to moderate level, because here specifically the UPSC had pinpoint towards a particular term that is called constitutional morality. So in general discussion also and otherwise also, I would always request you to before attempting the question, go through the question very carefully, and if required, read it twice. And while reading, if you can underline or write highlighted words or keywords, that will help you to frame an answer for this. Though this exercise is strictly limited to the classroom program only, because in UPSC answer sheets you are not allowed to write anything on the margins, but in the classroom practice you can do so. So when we talk about basically the constitutional morality, what the question says, let's try to see. So this is the most important term which we have to focus upon, and they are trying to ask, or the examiner is trying to ask, constitutional morality is rooted in the constitution itself. That means the another word we can highlight is constitution itself, and it is founded on the essential facets. So another word is essential facets. So in the regular discussion also, I always request the student to underline these keywords, because these are the keywords which will help you to understand the demand of the question. And there, when we try to attempt the answer, then you remember, let's say this is the margin 1 which we use to write the answer, and I always tell you to have a line here so that you can write down the points, plus whatever the words you have highlighted. For example, the first word is constitutional morality, so you write here, or maybe it is enshrined in the constitution itself, part of essential facet, so that could be the third word. But these are not to be done in the UPSC exam, actually these are to be done as a matter of practice. So that's why I said it will help the students who are going to write the exam. Doctrine of constitutional morality. So explain the doctrine of constitutional morality means their focus is again on this word only, plus they have tried to relate it with the current affairs also, that is with the help of relevant judicial decisions or the pronouncements. So another word could be the judicial pronouncements. So when we talk about these 4 words, by reading them upside down 2-3 times, you'll be able to understand what exactly the demand of the question is. And since here you have to focus upon one more thing, that is the keyword they have used is explain. So the moment we say explain becomes something like, you have to consider the examiner as a student, and you have to explain him or her with the way the teacher explained it to the student. So that should be your approach. So already you know the various keywords. Out of them, the one keyword which they have used here is explain. So they are asking for explanation. That means elaborate upon the concept. What concept? That is constitutional morality. And then substantiate your argument with giving certain examples. So that could be your approach to write this particular answer. Now, since this question is to be answered in 150 words, so for 150 words, as I've told you, the other things which you have to keep it in mind is plus or minus 10% variation you can keep. That is, you can write close to, let's say, 135 words to 165 words, or the time limit you have to is close to around 7 minutes or 7 minutes and 20 seconds. We can say quarter to 8 minutes. So 7 to 8 minutes you'll get to write this answer, and number of points we need is around 5 to 8 points to complete the answer. So those who are the classroom students or the part of being the student of Drishti IAS, they might be knowing what I'm trying to say. Those who are not, or general student fraternity who are watching this particular discussion, for them these are the things which we must do and practice in classroom only. In UPSC will not get that much time to experiment the things, but this is how the idea is. So here you have to first write those 5 to 8 points which you have written, and then you have to prioritize them, that in what sequence you are going to write the answer. Let's say your third point is first in your answer, or fifth point would be second in answer, first point would be third point in answer, so that here you can write them in point form or paragraph form, so that they will have a connect also with each other. There would be a flow in the answer. Now here very clear-cut pinpoint question is there about the constitutional morality, and they are saying that explain the doctrine of constitutional morality. That means the first and foremost thing we have to explain or we have to define the term constitutional morality. So now when we talk about, there could be two ways or two approaches by as to which a student can actually go ahead with the argument. One way is that where the student have read it thoroughly and basically or specifically, if one tries to hit the question, then they can start with the part 3 of the Constitution, Article 25 and 26, where the court has exclusively, elaborated upon the meaning of the term constitutional morality. But suppose that you have not read to that extent, or it has not been taught to you, or you have not read it by your own, then also you can start writing the answer from the understanding of the basic concept. So both the approach is a welcome approach. You can use any one of them, or definitely the answers which we are going to discuss here is not going to be the ideal answers or the model answers or the only answers, because a number of explanations can be given to this. Different people have different approach, even different faculties would have discussed in different mode. Ultimate end of the day, what is the requirement is nothing but you should be able to write at least 5 to 8 points which can give the expression to the examiner that the student had a good awareness about the demand of the question, plus he or she also have a enough amount of content to justify his or her argument. So if you follow that simple approach, things are going to be simple. So rather than complicating it. Now, when we talk about this part, let's try to discuss what are going to be the essential elements as far as these things are concerned. So we can say that here, for the explanation purpose, the question demands a brief understanding of the term constitutional morality, right? That you have to explain. Plus, you have to suffice it or add your answer with couple of examples, and that too examples they have said specifically related with the judicial verdicts or the pronouncements. That means when I'll introduce my answer, first I'll try to define the term constitutional morality, or if I see the structure of the answer, then this would be something like the opening statement or so-called introduction would be in the form of starting our answer with defining the term constitutional morality, if we know the term. If not, then we can write the general definition, and then the closing argument would be, or the conclusion part would be, substantiating with the judicial pronouncements, or we can say the judicial decisions, recent example, but the main crux would be the main body of the answer, where we can write multiple arguments as far as the concept, the origin, the elaboration and the implementation of the constitutional morality is concerned. So this is what we have to take into consideration for approaching our answer. Now when we talk about the constitutional morality, then here the arguments which we are going to take up is nothing but, if you know the term, define it. But I'm not sure how many of you will be in a position to immediately recall that term. And if you are unable to, then constitutional morality, or we can say the term constitutionalism related with it, is what we start with our discussion or classes, or the session on Indian polity. So there you can start by explaining the term constitutionalism first, if you know the term. So when we talk about the constitutionalism, as we have discussed in the sessions also, that it's nothing but a judicious balance between two things, between the power or the authority of the state or the government on behalf of state. This part we have done, plus the rights and the duties which are conferred to the citizen or the people. That means there has to be a judicious balance between the power conferred to the state or on behalf of state to the government vis-a-vis the rights and duties offered or conferred to the citizens of the country. None of them should be absolute in nature, because if power or authority becomes absolute, then what will happen? Then it will lead to an autocratic type of state, will lose the essential characteristics of democracy, and here if it becomes absolute, then it will lead to a anarchic or chaotic kind of society. So there would be a lot of chaos. Here it may lead to autocracy or dictatorship. So both are not desirable. That means the spirit or the idea or the essentials, the essence behind the constitution is uprooted into the stuff called constitutionalism. So you can start your introduction. Before explaining the term constitutional morality, you can say that there is an essential principle of constitutionalism which maintains a harmonious balance between the rights and duties of the people vis-a-vis powers conferred to the state or government, like that. Then when we enter into the main body and start the argument, then we can give certain more examples or elaborations where these terms are embedded into it. So for that we have to start with the actual discussion or explanation. So we can say, first of all, the term constitutional morality is nowhere defined in the constitution, not mentioned. That means it is something which is derived, right, over the period of time. So it is not mentioned per se that what is constitutional morality. कहीं भी लिखा नहीं है constitution में, so it has not been defined into the constitution, but certainly the elements, the essentials, the spirit and the essence of morality is there, no doubt about it. And when we talk about that morality, what basically it implies is nothing but to have a ability or a capacity to decide upon what is good and what is bad. So based upon the moral principles, if one can decide upon what is good and what is bad, definitely we can say that we are following the principle of morality. And if we look into that spectrum from the morality, not from the constitutional morality perspective, then there are a lot of principles or the essentials or the spirit which is mentioned into the essential features of the constitution. So you can take the reference for the essential features in the constitution, right, which is embedded in the form of preamble of the constitution, which is embedded in the form of fundamental rights, which is embedded in the form of DPSP, directive principle of state policy, to certain extent fundamental duties, etc. So there we have certain doctrines which supports this argument of having a morality. But when we say constitutional morality, that means it is something which is related with the public morality, related with reasonable restrictions which are there on either rights or duties or on the power or authority of the state or government. So there it comes the interpretation part, that how to interpret that, whether it is public morality which is correct or whether it is the constitutional morality which is correct and which one we should take forward. So as I told you, if you look at the question again, then here they are saying that constitutional morality is rooted in the constitution itself. So first we are trying to answer this argument that in constitution only there are certain principles like preamble, fundamental right and so on, or directive principles of state policy, or if you remember the keywords of the preamble, especially the triple SDR, that is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic and republic, or justice, liberty, equality, or unity, integrity and fraternity. These are the best source of taking a call whether the things are based upon the moral grounds or not, or reasonable restrictions can be there on the grounds of morality. Though the term constitutional morality is not there, but morality as a factor was definitely there. Plus, in fundamental rights, we study about a lot of reasonable restrictions. So those reasonable restrictions are many, like public order, decency and so on. Out of that, one important is the morality part, that it has subject to the public morality. Now, this is how we can give the message to the examiner that, okay, as far as the morality term is concerned, that is rooted in the essential part, or we can say the core values of the constitution, right? But the question is all about debating with the constitutional morality. So when we talk about moving further, it is founded on the essential facets. So we have to mention some essential facets, and then we have to go for explanation of the constitutional morality with the help of judicial decisions. So जब second part में आते हैं, actually the question starts from the second part only. This is just a direction given to you that in which direction we should write the answer. But when we proceed further, actual demand of the question is this, that explain the term constitutional morality with the various judgments. So after giving this introduction part and the first paragraph of main body, mentioning that there are certain features which are imbibed as the moral principles which we need to follow. So that principles we have to take into consideration. And as far as that morality discussion is concerned, right from the making of the constitution, that is right from the day one, or we can say the working of Constituent Assembly, there also this facet had been discussed, wherein the drafting committee chairman had always reiterated this fact that the constitution is something which is going to act as a supreme law of land, fundamental law of the land. But this is going to facilitate the administrative structure more. It's administrative conscience of the democratic system of India. But whenever, and the conflict between what is practice, what is accepted and what should be the case, or what ought to be and what is, then we have to take it into the perspective of or spectrum of morality. So for that we know that as far as the important organs of the government are concerned, or the state are concerned, including the legislature, executive and judiciary, judiciary has got this role of interpretation of the constitution. And whenever this kind of conflict comes, it's the judiciary which is having the authority to decide whether it's a part of morality or not, or does it relate to constitutional morality or not. So next part, when we are going to take up about the detailed discussion, that is nothing but the next point, that is D point, about the constitutional morality, then there were many instances, if you remember at that time, because while writing the exam, whether you can recall or not, that's a very tricky thing. But suppose you get the conscience of recalling the things which you have done with the cool mindset, then it would be very easy for you to. Why? Because if you talk about the cases which we generally discuss, important cases, related with the conflict between judiciary and executive, vis-a-vis legislature and so on, then in almost all the cases you will find that whenever the Supreme Court have tried to do the interpretation, they have taken into consideration the noble objectives which are mentioned in the preamble, the reasonable restrictions or justifying those reasonable restrictions and so on. So there the term morality was always there in one or the other form of restriction. But even for relating this, we can say that you can start your argument with Keshwanand Bharti case. Now, this is for someone who does not have the exact idea where the constitutional morality stuff has started coming. So you can start from here also, because why KBC? KBC was a very good example of incorporating the doctrine of basic structure. That means when we say the doctrine of basic structure, that means even the court also realized that there are certain basic, features, or we can say there are certain essential features of the Constitution which cannot be overridden even if there is a power of amendment to the Constitution under Article 368 lies with the Parliament or so-called legislature. So, legislature or Parliament is empowered to amend the Constitution, in fact including Part 3 of the Constitution, that is by 24th Amendment Act 1971. This was there, but they cannot actually break the essential characteristics, essential feature or basic elements of the Constitution. So in that basic element, one of the element could be the morality part. That is again a part of reasonable restriction only. So the way the literal interpretation of the Constitution is done is going to be different from the spectrum of constitutional morality. So there the court has very specifically talked about this particular thing of bringing the doctrine of basic structure. So from here also you can start your argument if your word limit allows to do so. If not, ignore this part, but if yes, then you can mention this part also. You can start your answer from explaining the KBC or writing about KBC as a passing reference in 1 or 2 lines. After that, there were many doctrines which had been pronounced by judiciary, especially when we talk about, and then KBC, after that Minerva Mill case, but more importantly, while interpretation of right to life, that is Article 21, where in Menka Gandhi case, of 1978, that could be the second example you can cite. That is the first way of approaching the answer. So in Menka Gandhi case also you can say that right to life had been recognized or accorded as not mere an animal existence, but right to life with dignity. So again, the right to life with dignity came into, and dignity has a very wide spectrum which we had seen while discussing this particular article in general. So again, the dignity term or incorporating the dignity term is based upon the morals only, right? So again, visualization of, we can say, the term morality comes into play when we talk about a dignified life. Incorporating the due process of law, DPL, from USA, we can say, or they said that is an inherent part of right to life with personal liberty, or it is much more than procedure established by law to have the due process of law, that is to check the intention or the motive behind making any legislation. So that implies what Parliament cannot do directly, they cannot do indirectly also, because doctrine of DPL will come as far as the interpretation is concerned. So while interpreting the Constitution from the due process of law perspective, there also the element of morality is very much reflected. No doubt about it. So these couple of examples you can cite because they are saying you to explain the doctrine with the help of examples. So this is the another reference or example you can cite upon. Apart from that, the right to privacy issue which we have done, so you can give a passing reference of Puttaswamy judgment also, right, where again the principle of morality has been held. So another example could be of judicial pronouncement is nothing but you can mention about the Puttaswamy judgment case related with right to privacy and many more such things. So this could be the second or third paragraph of your main body to ensure the examiner that you know the things and now you are trying to put them in step by step format. But actual talks, when we talk about the constitutional morality, the term constitutional morality, as in the beginning you have mentioned to the examiner, that is nowhere mentioned, but rather, or not defined into the Constitution, it has evolved over a period of time. So the exact instance, or the exact examples which we are looking for this particular question, because they have specifically asked you to include some examples, so that can be taken when the next thought process or next paragraph of human body would be there. You need to mention about the right to freedom of religion. From there we had actually taken this, or Supreme Court has mentioned. So when we talk about the right to freedom of religion, then again, let it be any right. It is subjected to reasonable restriction, no doubt about it. And what are the restrictions and what is reasonable or not, that is the job of Supreme Court. So they tried to actually give more clarification about the doctrine of constitutional morality. So here exactly the point where you can explain the difference, and two things if you can mention in your answer. One is doctrine of essentiality and other is doctrine of morality. So when we talk about doctrine of morality, basically the constitutional morality. So if you remember the doctrine of essentiality, it's good. If not, then also you can just give the passing reference that doctrine of essentiality simply implies what could be an essential thing and what could not be an essential thing that can be classified based upon the morality. So in classroom also we have discussed continuation of this point. If we talk about then as far as the doctrine of essentiality is concerned, what is essential and not, that was done in Shirur Mutt case of 1954, where Supreme Court has taken the responsibility of classifying the things which could be essential for a particular religion and which could not be essential for a particular religion. So problem is what? In a religion, there are some core values and there are some peripheral values. So core and periphery kind of concept. Core value could be related to conscience, practice, profess, propagate and so on, and peripheral could be laws related with marriage, succession, inheritance, personal laws, and so on. And these peripheral things were actually acting as a constraint, as a bottlenecks, as an obstacle for social reforms like sati pratha, Dahej, dowry kind of thing, or domestic violence, child labor, child marriage and so on. So these were some of the things which one particular section of the society thinks that it is what essential practices to their religion. But Supreme Court or the Honorable Court had said that whether a particular practice is essential or not, it's our duty to define. Though we'll allow all the religion to have their practices, but what is essential and what is non-essential component, that we will define. So they use the doctrine of essentiality way back with respect to religion. So core is fine, but if something is coming in periphery which is obstructing the reforms, Supreme Court can declare that as null and void, like doing away with the sati pratha or triple talaq ordinance and so on, or triple talaq rule. So like that they have decided those issues as far as the doctrine of essentiality is concerned. Though multiple times we had seen that even Supreme Court is also taking a different stand as far as determining this doctrine of essentiality is concerned, because sometimes they rely upon the religious teaching, sometimes they rely upon the religious text, sometimes they take the rational and logical approach of determining what is essential and what is not essential, depend upon the modernization in the society. So multiple approaches there. So this also is being criticized. However, related with this particular debate only, they came up with the idea of constitutional morality. So when we talk about constitutional morality, then here again with respect to Article 25 and 26, they decided to define the term or given a sort of judgment or verdict. And case we all know that it was nothing but the Indian Young Lawyers Association case, or popularly what we call Sabrimala case. So another good example you can cite about is nothing but the Sabrimala issue. Now you know about the Sabrimala case, so here you can mention about Sabrimala judgment or Sabrimala case taken, or Indian Young Lawyer Association case versus State of Kerala. There the Supreme Court very clearly says that though the term constitutional morality is nowhere mentioned in the constitution, but while interpreting this particular thing, we all know about this case. It was related with preventing the entry of women in the age group of 10 to 50 years, as far as the deity Lord Ayappa is concerned, because he was is considered to be a celibate or celibate, right? So regarding that, it was found to be discriminatory as far as the gender equality is concerned, looking with perspective or prism of the modernization, the changes in the 21st century. Supreme Court has, lifted that ban and allowed the entry of the women into, especially the women in their productive cycle. Anyways, so that judgment, you can just give a passing reference for that. And here they have said that wherever we have used the term morality, right, in the Constitution, that can be termed as, though we have used the term morality in sense of reasonable restriction, that can be related with or that can be termed as constitutional morality. So what public believe, or general orientation is there based upon tradition, based upon mythology, based upon religious practices, values, customs, norms, etc., might appear moral or morally correct for the public at large, but while doing the interpretation of the things, court will not get into that. Rather, court will upheld or give the superiority to the constitutional morality rather than the public morality. So public morality may change over a period of time. When the situation changes in the society, the thinking of the people change. But constitution is something which is going to be adherent on the principle of rationality, rational approach, principle of logical approach, rather than manifested on what people feel, what people believe, or what people practice. If in a way it is contradicting the constitutional values, it is contradicting the essential values enshrined into the Constitution, then it could lead to some sort of conflict, and there the Supreme Court may apply this doctrine of constitutional morality as far as upholding this particular principle is concerned. So this is the another example you can quote and move ahead with your argument. Then not only this, like that, many judgments are there, especially when we talk about the judgment related with a very important section of IPC. You might be aware about 377, decriminalization of homosexuality. So when we talk about section 377 or decriminalization of homosexuality, this is another example you can say, or you can give the example of the case which is related with the NAS Foundation or Suresh Kaushal case, or at the end you can say about the 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐡𝐭𝐢 case. So those examples also you can quote as far as this particular thing is concerned. So NAS Foundation, 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐡𝐭𝐢, not only related with the section 377 but also 497, which talks about the adultery part. So all these examples can be cited as the various judicial pronouncements where the Honorable Court has upheld the doctrine of constitutional morality as far as not only they were inherent, as we have seen. If we go back to the question, then you can relate it. It is not only rooted in the Constitution itself, as I've told you, because the various values which are imbibed in the Constitution, whether we talk about the justice, whether we talk about liberty, whether we talk about fraternity, unity, integrity, right, or the rights and the duties, or in the facet or the form of constitutionalism. So they all are there in the Constitution itself, and which is founded on its essential facets, means basic structure or basic elements. Doctrine of constitutional morality, with the help of relevant judicial decisions, you can give those examples to supplement your answer. So like that, if you write, very easily you'll be able to cover 5 to 8 points along with the example within the prescribed word limit, and you'll be able to write a good answer. Is that clear? So this is what we can say is nothing but related with the term constitutional morality, and one of the answer for this particular question, or how we should go about this particular question. So I hope it's clear now. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. When we talk about the next one, then next question is related with the another document or another question, that is, to what extent your view, that means here, this is the thing which we have to take into consideration, the Parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India. So very simple question. Why very simple? Because it's a direct question. And if you remember, I told you already that whenever you get a question with respect to these three words W, WH and H, that is who, what, when, where, how, consider yourself to be lucky for that day, because these are purely fact-based questions. Very less analysis is required when they ask the direct question. It was something like what is being asked to us in our university examination and all those things. So जब ऐसे कीवर्ड मिल जाए खुशी मनाना चाहिए. These are the bonus mark, provided you know the content. So to what extent in your view? Now, second thing before moving with the question, when it is saying your view, right, please don't write your personal views. Why? Because your view does not mean that only your view. Like you, many yours are there in the exam who will be writing the answer. So the moment it comes your view, please don't start using the word like I think, or in my opinion. These words should be avoided. Rather, try to write with the third person's respect only. Though it is your view only, but try to write it in such a way that it seems to be accommodative of other people's view as well. So your view does not specifically means your own view only. Okay. So these kind of words must be avoided. Either write in second person's view or the third person's respect, that you can use the we term or they term. We think that, or as per their opinion, or they think like that, something like that you can use. Don't go for exclusively writing I or me or in my opinion. Anyways, the parliament is able to ensure the accountability of the executive. That means this is a straightforward question which is dealt with the three important wings: legislature, judiciary and executive. So we know that we have a theory of separation of power, right? So as per SOP, that is separation of power theory, these three wings are separate and their exclusive functions are also demarcated. But in India, we don't follow the strict theory of separation of power. Rather, we have a weak theory of separation of power, not as good as advocated by the Montesquieu. Rather, we follow a weak separation of power because of the kind of or the parliamentary form of government we had opted for. That's why we have another concept to supplement this weak one, or to take care of this weaker position, that is known as the checks and balances doctrine. So since we follow the doctrine of checks and balances, that's why here, if any wing of the government exercise its authorization or jurisdiction, the other two will try to control this. And with this only, this question comes that how the parliament, that means how the legislature, right, is going to exercise accountability of the executive, right? That means how the legislature is going to, judiciary also controls the executive, but that is not the part of question now. The question is how the legislature or parliament controls the executive, we can say checks the accountability of the executive, right, in India. Again, this question is for 150 words, so very limited word limit is there, and we have to accommodate 5 to 6 points as far as this control is concerned. So this is the topic which we deal generally in the legislature, that is Article 79 to 122 of the Constitution talks about this, right, as far as their functioning is concerned. Plus there is a very important topic called center and state relationship. So if you have done these two parts, I think it would be very easy for you to approach this question. Like, let's see the arguments. So when we talk about the arguments, then the arguments are nothing but here. As far as the domain is concerned, this question we can take it from legislature, that is constitutional provisions 79 to 122. This is for your understanding. Or we can take it the executive part. There also we can understand this question 58 to 79. If not, then basically the center-state relationship. So I would place this question mainly into center-state relationship. And when we talk about center-state relationship, we all know that this is nothing but the part of 11th and 12th. Part 11 and part 12 of the Constitution deals with this, or articles ranging from 245 to 300 is what we can say U by A means article 245 to 300. There we deal with this relationship, and three types of relationships are there. One, the legislative relationship. Other, the administrative relationship, and other, the financial relationship. So, Article 245 to 255, 256 to 262 we can say, or 263, and then 268 to 300. So that's how the constitutional provision is. But no need to mention this. This is just for your understanding because the question is direct. If you see the question, then directly to what extent the parliament ensures the accountability of the executive. That means as far as the control over the executive is concerned. So we know that because of the parliamentary form of democracy, our executives are drawn from the legislature, especially the permanent political ones, right? They belong to legislature also. That's why there is a overlapping of the functioning, in spite of the fact that we follow the separation of power, but it's a weak separation. That's why checks and balances comes, and that's how ensuring the accountability comes into play. So when we talk about this particular thing, then here directly we can hit the question because it is what? A fact-based question. So as far as the role of legislature or role of parliament when we had seen is concerned, so role of legislature is what? The main role is nothing but to make the laws or to do the legislation, that is lawmaking part. But apart from that, it has also other role, that is nothing but exercising the control over executive, because executive is drawn from the parliament. And this control is manifested. It is having multiple connotation. Why? Because the most important control which parliament exercise over the executive is nothing but financial control. But that is not the only control we can say, or that is not the only accountability, right, over the executive, but there are also other formats by which the control to ensure the accountability of the executive is done by the legislature, that is called parliament. And this is what we have to answer. So the demand of the question is nothing but you must know those instruments by which the accountability is ensured. This is what we have to mention in the answer. That means the main body would be related with those instruments which are used for ensuring the accountability of executive, right? And if you read the question again, this is what they are demanding, that in your view, parliament is able to ensure accountability of executive in India. To what extent? That means what are the instruments they use and how far those instruments are successful in utilizing the legislative control over the executive, or we can say ensuring the accountability of the executive. So first briefly mention about those instruments and then substantiate it with the extent of accountability that can be ensured. That means certain loopholes which might be there as far as exercising those controls are there, that can also be highlighted. So the next stuff in the main body could be, you can write about the instruments or devices which are used by the legislature. So legislature means parliament for exercising the accountability over executive. So when we are doing the proceedings, instruments and all those things as far as the parliament is concerned, then we had seen a lot of these kind of instruments by which the legislature ensures the accountability. Like first, some instruments like in the form of question hour. So this is the one instrument, including the 0 hour, or in question hour also you can mention about the start question and start question and so on, or the short notice questions. So one line of reference you can write related with this, that is how they exercise through question hours. Then apart from the question hours and the 0 hour instrument, there is also a lot of motions and the resolutions which are used by legislature. So through motions and resolutions. So that is another thing you can mention about. In motions you can say right from motion of thanks to no confidence motion, calling attention motion, adjournment motion, उस समय जितना याद आए आप सब लिख सकते हैं, या नहीं याद आ रहा है तो you can just write about the motions. Plus when we talk about resolution, so removal or impeachment of certain authorities, including the impeachment of the President of India, removal of the Vice President, or the other executives also by the removal process. So removal of VP plus removal of authorities appointed by the executive, including the judges or the members or chairperson of UPSC, Election Commission, and so on, like that. So mainly the resolution for these kind of things by which they exercise the accountability of executive. Then most important control, as I've told you, or accountability check is nothing but in the form of financials. So when we talk about the financial control, we know that executive cannot withdraw a single penny from the consolidated fund of India until unless the authorization from the parliament comes. So in that sense, you can just mention about the financial control in the form of budget as an instrument, passing of the appropriation. If you remember all those things, then bill, etc. The various cut motions which can be introduced in the house while exercising this. So some bit of information you can mention in the third paragraph, let's say first, second and third paragraph. Then also, apart from exercising this financial instrument for controlling, which is the most important weapon as far as the control over the executive is concerned, they also have a mechanism of establishing the committees, especially the parliamentary committees. So you can mention about them, both the standing and the ad hoc committees for the scrutiny in the form of departmentally related parliamentary standing committee, or the estimate committee, or the other financial committee like public account committee, committee on public sector undertakings, and so on. So like that also, parliamentary committee plays a vital role as far as ensuring or keeping the accountability of the executive towards the parliament is concerned. Plus, parliament also takes a lot of action as far as the qualification and disqualification of the members are concerned. So in the form of that, they also do it through the various privilege motions. So in qualification and disqualification, especially the anti-defection law, we can mention about Representation of People's Act, we can mention about. These are the instruments by which the executive accountability can be ensured, no doubt about it. So these are some of the highlights you can mention in your answer as far as the instrument of accountability is concerned, or we can say here, to what extent parliament is able to ensure the accountability of the executive in India. So first two paragraphs you can devote for the instrument of accountability. But the main part is to what extent the parliament is able to ensure. That means we have to talk about certain loopholes also, obstacles also, because of which the parliament is unable to exercise the control. So here, while mentioning this, you can do this there only. Like for example, here you can mention the loophole also by giving certain examples also, that when we talk about the question hour. Now, when we talk about the question hour, then especially the effectiveness of this question hour had declined over a period of time. In COVID circumstances, you have seen that the government has suspended the question hour for some time. Then the quality of the debate and the discussion which are taking place in the question hour, or maybe in the 0 hour and so on, that is also subjected to a question mark, because first of all, not only the amount of questions are concerned, but even the replies given, or we can say the quality of debate or discussion which is taking place, that is also weakening a lot. When we talk about motions or resolutions and so on, specifically almost all the motions which are used or instruments which are used to exercise the control, or ensure the accountability of executive, there, since executive is in the majority, there is a very rare possibility of those motions or those instruments getting utilized. Let it be the no confidence motion, or let it be the other things may be related with the appropriation bill, cut motions, and so on. So their government is enjoying a majority in the House, so it's definitely, very difficult to get them passed or to ensure the accountability. When we talk about the committees and all those things, in parliamentary committees also we had seen most of the representatives are there from the government side only, so there also they have that dominance, and which creates a loophole, right? That how to highlight the weaknesses as far as the assertiveness of the executive is concerned by the parliament, because first of all, this committee is also consist of the members who are more in numbers because of the government is in majority. Second thing, none of the committees we have where their recommendations are binding on the government, they are advisory in nature. So, or they are doing post-mortem reports. Once the things had been done, money had been spent, then their accountability, or then they bring in the report. So that is something like a paper tiger or snake without teeth kind of thing, that only they can recommend, they can suggest, but nothing is obligatory on the government or binding on the government to do so. So we can say so that this is certainly, not fulfilling the aim or fulfilling the objective for which they had been created to ensure the effective control or accountability. But being said so, it doesn't mean that, the accountability is not there. In the past, we have so many examples, of role played by these committees and so on to highlight the irregularities in the government functioning. And to an extent, we talk about the previous government led by UPA that went out of the power because of the reports or the documents highlighted by PAC and so on, as far as the allegation of corruption or misappropriation of the finances are concerned in 2G and the Colgate and the other spectrum related cases. So they are effective at times, no doubt about it, but we need to strengthen them more to make them more effective instrument of ensuring the financial or in general also the accountability of executive. So like that we can cope up with the demand of this particular question as far as this thing is concerned. Since the word limit is very restricted, we may not go into much more detailed elaboration, so a passing reference of all these things must be there, so that at least the examiner will get the idea that you have the good understanding of what is the demand of the question, and you are trying to accommodate those things by giving the multiple passing references mentioning about those instruments and their effective utilization. Is that clear? Great. So now let's move on to the next set of question. When we talk about, then as far as the next set of question is concerned, next we have is how the recommendation, this is so beautiful thing I experienced in this question paper is most of the questions are what? This WH and WH. That means direct question. It's a good thing, because had it been the word is critically analyze the recommendations of 14th Finance Commission, questions would have been turned into one of the utmost difficult questions. But since how, what, when, why, where, these kind of keywords, if you get in the answer question, celebrate it like it. So here, how have the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission? Now, when we talk about the 14th Finance Commission, then here the point to be noted is the 15th Finance Commission is already in place, recommendations or terms of reference we can say, and this is slightly, I can say, not very much current oriented, but somebody who had prepared this or studied about the constitutional bodies, then definitely the person would or the student will have the idea about it. And 14th Finance Commission is somewhat good also. Why good also? Because it has introduced a slew of reforms which has changed the whole dynamics as far as the center and the state relationship is concerned. So again, this topic is based upon the CSR only, we can say, center-state relationship, especially the financial relations. And Finance Commission, we all know, just I was explaining you the previous question, so there I have told you about the financial relation part 268 to 300. Here we have this article 280 which talks about the Finance Commission. So let's see what the question is saying. How have the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission of India enabled the states to improve their fiscal positions? Again, 150 words, very limited space we have to write this particular answer, but if you know a bit of it, it's fine. If you don't have idea, try to write in general. So Here we can say how the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission. So this question does not require any introduction, but suppose you have less point in the exam, then you can start with the introduction part also. So in introduction part, just the first point would be mention about the Finance Commission. And when you mention about the Finance Commission, then obviously give a passing reference of Article 280, that it is appointed by the President of India for 5 years, right, comprising of chairperson, right, and the other members. So though it is not required, but suppose you don't know much point, then to complete the word limit also you need some point. So in one paragraph or first paragraph or introductory statement you can give about the Finance Commission in this manner. Is that clear? Now the question is very specific to 14th Finance Commission. So if you have the idea about it, you'll be able to write. If not, then you should write in a generalistic manner. What is generalistic manner? So while studying the Finance Commission, you might have studied about the role of the Finance Commission. So second paragraph, you can mention about the role of Finance Commission, and one of the important role of Finance Commission is nothing but to recommend about the distribution. So you have to talk about the distribution of net proceeds. When we talk about net proceeds, so net means total collected revenue minus the expenses which occurred in that collection, that could be net proceeds. So let's say 100 rupees is collected, 20 rupees utilized for the machinery, or you can say the instrument which is used for collecting. So remaining is 80, that 80 rupees, how that net proceeds has to be distributed between the center and the state. That part, that recommendation is given by the Finance Commission. So this is the body, constitutional body, which is constituted for this purpose. There are many functions to it, but one of the most important function is nothing but to recommend the distribution of net proceeds. But the biggest problem is it is recommendatory. It just recommends. Whether the government will accept it or not, that's a different thing. But financial relationship, when we talk about the center and state relation, then it is nothing but Finance Commission is the one instrument, one body which promotes the fiscal federalism in India, or it is also a part of cooperative federalism. That's why most likely the government accepts the recommendations of the Finance Commission, and it's the government only which gives the terms of reference to the Finance Commission. That's why they generally accept it. So this is the second paragraph you can mention in general. Apart from that, they also, recommend the measures for augmenting the physical position. We can say how to strengthen the physical position of the states, right? As far as the financial consolidation is concerned, that is also one of the job of Central Finance Commission. There is a State Finance Commission also, but that is with respect to the local bodies, the Panchayati Raj institutions or urban local bodies. So that we don't need to mention here. We just need to hover around the Central Finance Commission because it is about the Central Finance Commission. Now, if you remember about 14th Finance Commission, it's fine. If you don't remember, write it in general manner. But let's say suppose you remember, you have the idea. So there you can talk about the 14th Finance Commission specific recommendation headed by Mr. Reddy. So 14th Finance Commission is recommended for a devolution or more financial devolution, we can say, as far as center and the state thing is concerned. And that's why it is considered to be a landmark, a watershed, a paradigm shift in the CSR, center-state relationship. Because see how it has started. So for that you can mention the 10th Finance Commission, if you remember. Now when we talk about 10th Finance Commission, it has recommended for ADS. ADS is considered to be alternate devolution scheme right, and here they have recommended for the net devolution of, we can say, 30, actually started with 28% and 32%, okay, and so on. It went on increasing. So from 10th Finance Commission, and that too from a retrospective effect of 1996. So if you remember, then only write, because this is some old fact, we can say. But if you don't remember, nothing to worry about it. The same ADS alternative devolution scheme had been recommended by the Finance Commission to increase it from 32 to 42%. So all of a sudden a quantum jump of 10%, which is the highest ever recommended by any of the Finance Commission. What is the logic? Logic is nothing but if this 42% devolution is there, or if the center can give this funds to the state out of the net proceeds, then definitely will it not help in empowering the position of the state as far as the financial condition is concerned, right? That's why here what question is trying to say is nothing but how the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission of India had helped the states in improving their fiscal position. So this is how, when they have started getting 42%, from earlier 32%, that means 10% extra funds would be there for them to launch their policies, to successfully implement their policies. See what happens here. We have to have a little bit understanding of the background also. When we talk about the position as far as the taxation is concerned, right from Article 268, 269, 270, 271, right, and then 268A, 269A also. That though we can discuss in a classroom program, not now. But overall, if you see, then most of the revenue generating areas are in the hands of center. Though we say that center had a union list, just like legislative power including 13 items, state have more number of items. They have 18 items as far as the tax revenue is concerned. But those 18 items are something like, transferred and reserved subject way back. So less revenue generating areas had been given to the state. That's why state always depends on the center for the finances, and hence there was a term which had been used as glorified municipalities for the states. So they are termed as glorified municipalities. So financial dependency is always there. Since the states also have an uneven regional distribution of the resources, some states may have more, some states may not have at all. That's why we have a concept of special status given to the states, or we can say, the provisions for the grant is also there to be given to the state. But because of the change in the political scenario, if a same party is ruling in the state, they will be having or getting more funds. If the opposition party or other party than the center party is there in the state, they will be getting less funds and so on. So a lot of discrepancies are there. However, 14th Finance Commission has tried to overcome this by suggesting more devolution of the funds from the center to the state so that their fiscal position can be more strengthened. Their dependency on the center could be reduced. This was the idea behind the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission. Then other argument, not only this, the other ways by which the states can get the fund is nothing but in the form of grants or grant in aid. So this is also, we can say, when we talk about the grant or grant in aid, that means as per the Article 275, the states are entitled to get these grants. But the point is what? As I told you, this grant in aid comes with a lot of conditions, a lot of restrictions. When the center gives the money, they give a lot of guidelines also. They give a lot of instructions also that this fund has to be utilized like this and all those things. So this part is also there. So it is the 14th Finance Commission which has recommended for reducing the conditionalities, right, or whatever the terms and conditions are there as far as the grants are concerned. Once you have given the grants, let them decide what is good for them, what is bad for them, how they are going to manage that particular fund, and then only they'll be able to take a call that how they can augment their fiscal position or how they can strengthen the consolidated fund of the state so that their dependency can be reduced. So like that we can say that this is there. Other suggestions also you can make apart from the Finance Commission, that how it will empower the state. So then state would be what? If they have the fund, they will be able to launch the state specific schemes, right? And this will help the state to actually launch those schemes which is required for maybe the empowerment of the people, or maybe for the welfare activities, maybe diverting those funds in the services sector or industries or agriculture, depending upon what constitutes the most in the GDP of the state, we can say. So like they can channelize their funds. Plus, as far as the power to levy the taxes are concerned, that must be given more to the states on those areas which are highly income generating. So not only for the taxable part, but also the non-taxable part, we can say, right, income, there also the state must get the liberty. Okay. Plus, there is also a concept of cess, surcharge, etc., which is completely used by center, which constitute around total 20% of the total, liquidity what the government have, and nothing of that is shared with the state government. So there must be a provision, by which the cess or the surcharges which are collected by the center, because it is levied by the center, collected by the center, and appropriated by the center, it is not shared. So there must be a mechanism for sharing that cess part as well. And after the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, the responsibility of the local bodies, that is Panchayati Raj institutions and the urban local bodies, that also came on the shoulders of state government. And they also struggle with these three problems only, that is called triple F: funds, functions, and functionaries. Now to eliminate this or to reduce this burden, what center can do is center can directly, take care of the financing part of the local bodies so that the burden on the state government could be reduced. So these are a couple of suggestions which you can use or which you can write as additional point apart from the recommendations of the Finance Commission, because if suppose you don't remember, it's quite old now, so if you don't remember, then you can mention about it. Plus another passing reference, you can talk about the GST. So when we talk about goods and services tax, it was also one of the important recommendation of 14th FC only, and there the provisions for the compensation was there that must be extended for, let's say, another 5 years or so, until and unless initially it was for 5 years, and it must be extended for another 5 years, so that whatever the loss which had been incurred by the state governments, and especially the indirect taxes, they must be compensated by the central government at the earliest. So these are a couple of things which you can mention as far as this question is concerned. Again, being factual in nature, it will not take much toll as far as the analysis is concerned, but if you're good at the facts or you have a good understanding, then for 150 words, the 7-8 points are going to be enough to write this particular answer. Is that clear? Perfect. So let's move on now to the next question. And when we talk about the next question, then this question is about the non-constitutional, unconstitutional bodies, what we can say. So it is from constitutional, unconstitutional, extra-constitutional, quasi-judicial, and those segment of polity. And this is about the Human Rights Commission. So when we talk about Human Rights Commission, we know that it's a sort of extra-constitutional or statutory body, not a constitutional body, established under the Human Rights Act in 1992-93. What is the question? Though the Human Rights Commissions have contributed immensely to the protection of human rights in India, yet they have failed to assert themselves against the mighty, this is the word, and the powerful. Now up to here, this is the direction given by the examiner, that what answer you are supposed to write or what could be the question. The actual question starts from here. Analyze their structural and the practical limitations and suggest the remedial measures. Answer in 250 words. So here you'll get a quite good word limit, 225 to 275 words you can write very easily. And this is based upon the structural deficiencies associated with the NHRC, we can say, or SHRC, that is National Human Rights Commission or the State Human Rights Commission. So if you know that body, it's really good. If you don't know, then at least try to write in general that what NHRC, because you might have read, during your sessions or preparations as far as the Human Rights Commission is concerned. So here the first part is talking about that, the contribution of Human Rights Commission, which is good, no doubt about it, but certainly it has certain limitations which needs to be taken care. So what are those? So when we talk about this, the first one would be, or the first point would be, introduction about the National Human Rights Commission or State Human Rights Commission. Okay. So basically you talk about this, that this has been constituted as a purpose to establish them as the watchdog for violations of human rights in India. So if you have additional information, you can mention more also, that it is as per the International Conventions of United Nations Organization, or as per the UNDP, United Nations Development Program. In tune with that, we also have this particular body. So this part also you can mention, or this has been established as a statutory body as per the NHRC Act of 1993, and subsequently the states have followed. So this much part you can introduce in your first paragraph, or you can say the opening statement of your answer. This is not the question, and this is not the answer. This is just the beginning. Answer is here. Analyze their structural and practical limitation. So we have to understand the structural and practical limitation. So from here we can start the answer. That means the point B, or second point in the answer, would be about the structure. So when we talk about the structure, if you know the structure, it's good. If you don't know the structure, then it might be a little bit problematic, but in general you can write. What in general you can write? That when we talk about this particular body, so as far as any human rights commission is concerned, that commission will have definitely a chairperson. So even the, let's say we talk about NHRC, it also have a chairperson. It is going to have some members. So there are two types of members. One, the full-time member, right, and other, the ex officio members. That is, ex officio means by virtue of. So we know that when we talk about the chairperson, one chairperson would be there, who must be a retired Chief Justice of India, or now it has been amended, so a serving judge of the Supreme Court can also be there. When we talk about the members, 5 full-time members must be there, out of which 2 must be there from the judicial background, 3 must be there from the knowledge or understanding of the human rights. So in general you can write about this. Ex officio members are 7 members which are from National Commission for, women, for SC, for ST, for BC, for minorities, and so on. So these are also the ex officio members. That means composition of the NHRC can be termed, and based upon the similar line, the State Human Rights Commission also had their similar composition. So when we talk about composition, no doubt about it that NHRC is supposed to look like a much more democratic institution because of the presentation, or because of the representation from ex officio members, or from the full-time members, or from the chairman. So the way the composition is there, we can see it seems to be a more democratic body. But the problem comes when we see the process, how these people are appointed. So when we talk about the appointment of these members, then they are appointed by a committee which is again comprised of 6 members, including the Prime Minister of India as the chairman, then the Union Home Minister, leader of opposition. If leader of opposition is not there, leader of the largest party or largest opposition party in the house, the deputy chairman, and then probably some other members. So they are basically there in the committee who recommends the name for the appointment of the members to the NHRC. From here the problem starts because of this thing. Because moment PM comes into play, or only one member is there who is from opposition, rest all are from the government side, that is leader of opposition or leader of the largest opposition party, then since the government itself have the monopoly as far as the composition is concerned or structure of the NHRC is concerned, it is very difficult to assume or believe that NHRC would be functioning neutrally. That means what happens? There is an element of subjectivity would be there as far as their functioning is concerned, or there can be element of biasness would be there. Why? Because these members are appointed by the government which is in power, right? So the government which is in power, or the government which is in majority, they are the one who appoints the members and other people of NHRC. So it is difficult to assume that if the case is against the government only, or if the government is one of the party to that dispute where the human rights violation had took place, difficult to assume that NHRC will be able to take any stand because of the fear and the favor principle. So this is the first structural deficiency we can monitor. We can see that because of the influence or the presence of the larger proportion of the government representatives, it is difficult to understand or difficult to believe that NHRC or state HRC would be capable of functioning neutrally. This is the one structural deficiency. Then when we talk about the other points, then another point as far as the functioning is concerned, then another big problem with their functioning is nothing but they have a lot of limitations. What limitations they have? Like first, they are an advisory body, right? So when we say advisory body, here only the whole importance of any organization, and as I told you, most of the committees and commissions or almost all the committees and commissions are recommendatory in nature. They can give the recommendation, but they don't have the power to take the action. So here, advisory body, that means whatever it is going to recommend, that is not binding on the government or the state. So it's not binding. That means government will always be in a favorable position to deny that. First of all, they will not accept only, and if they accept it, they will not be able to implement it, or they are not going to implement it. So that's another problem. Then other limitation or structural deficiency we can say is the tenure part or the term. So term or tenure, now we know that as far as the NHRC or the body is concerned, they can take up the case either suo motu, by their self-initiative, or somebody should admit the or file the petition or file the complaint with the NHRC. So when this is the case, in that case, the NHRC can entertain the cases only 1 year old. Initially it was more, but now 1 year old. So within 1 year, if the complaints had been filed, NHRC will be able to review that. If it is beyond 1 year period, they cannot do anything. Then next thing is, as far as the working of concern, they don't have their own dedicated team of employees or personnel with them for carrying out the investigation and so on. So in fact, they have to depend upon the state machinery, right? Law and order being the subject of state, and state machinery including the police and other investigating agencies. So obviously, try to understand. If the case is against the state itself, how much cooperation the state will give to these bodies is a subjective question in itself. ठीक है, तो भाई उन्हीं के अगेंस्ट केस है तो फिर वो कहाँ सपोर्ट करेंगे? Then apart from that, they also have lack of resources. And when we talk about lack of resources, especially the resources in terms of financial and the human resources. So human resources, I have told you, they have to depend. Financial, the budgetary allocation for them is so less that it is difficult for them to pay the salaries and the other allowances for their staff. Forget about incorporating the world-class facilities, including the forensics and the incubation centers or the testing centers and all those things, or investigating teams. They will not be able to do क्योंकि उतना पैसा ही नहीं मिलता है. तो जब उतना पैसा ही नहीं मिलता तो काम कहाँ से करेंगे? बंदरबाट चलती है उसी में. जितने पैसे मिले हैं उसी में पहले सैलरी एडजस्ट करो, केस तो बाद में देख लेंगे. ठीक है. तो these are some of the structural deficiencies what we can say as far as their functioning is concerned. लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि NHRC का रोल इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन का रोल इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है. इन द पास्ट, as far as their functioning is concerned, they are really, effectively functioning well, no doubt about it. ठीक है. तो इफेक्टिव फंक्शनिंग में अगर हम देखेंगे तो बहुत सारे केसेस रिलेटेड विद द ग्रॉस ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन की अगर हम बात करें, जेल में इनमेट्स की कंडीशंस की बात करें, एनवायरमेंटल रिलेटेड थिंग्स की बात करें, या बाकी सारी चीज़ों की बात करें, तो दे हैड परफॉर्म वेल, बट द प्रॉब्लम इज ओनली फॉर द स्मॉल प्लेयर्स. When we say small players, that means not against the rich or the powerful, and this is what the question is asking, that here against the mighty and the powerful. So mighty and the powerful, the rich people, the influential people, the political people, for them it is difficult to trap them because of those structural deficiencies. But otherwise, for the smaller people, they have done a couple of good things in the past, no doubt about it. But when the question comes for these powerful people and mighty people, they failed miserably because of those structural deficiencies, or the structural, we can say, constraints. So against small player, yes, their working is, we can say, acceptable or somewhat appreciable also. But when it comes to the big people, big powerful people or rich people, then God knows where their efficiency goes, or they are unable to discharge their duty because of lack of these things. Is that clear? So that's how we can substantiate our argument, by highlighting those weak areas as far as the functioning of the Human Rights Commission is concerned. Yes? Then we can get into the another question that analyze the distinguishing features as far as the notion of the equality is concerned in India as well as US. So this is nothing but the topic which is related with the comparative study. And even if you don't had the idea about the comparative study, what you can understand is nothing but you can realize upon the discussion on fundamental rights, right to equality part, what we had seen. So here the question is nothing but talking in terms of equality only, right, in the Constitution of USA and in the Constitution of India, right? So here they are talking about the distinguishing feature. Now when we say distinguishing feature, it can be related with the similarities also and the differences also. Had it been only the differences, we could have written only one thing. Had it been only with the similarity, we could have written only similarity. But distinguishing feature means you can write both the similarities as well as the differences. More focus should be on differences, but otherwise also. Now again the two things, if you have read that thing, it's fine. Even if you have not read, then also you can write an equally good answer. If you have done the right to equality part in fundamental rights seriously, then you could have understood this very easily. Now, we'll take up the differentiating feature, but when we talk about the equality part, right, so it is one of the right, for which we have struggled a lot. And the first and foremost argument we can say, as far as the principle of equality is concerned, right, then the first and foremost mention we can see in preamble of our Constitution, right, which is not the case with the US Constitution. So in the beginning only we find the place for the equality as far as our Constitution is concerned, with the opening, with the preface or with the introductory note of the Constitution, and it talks about the political equality, social equality, economic equality and so on, which we have discussed. But after that we have an elaborate discussion or mention as far as the rights related with the equality is concerned, right, right to equality in the form of Article 14 to 18 under the Part 3 of the Constitution. So when we say right to equality under Part 3 of the Constitution, this is the another striking feature what we have as far as the US Constitution is concerned. Why? Because in US Constitution, the first and foremost thing, it is not mentioned in the US Constitution. So here the point of difference can be made that as far as the US Constitution is concerned, we know that it's a small constitution comprising of 7 articles only, right? So first of all, the original Constitution of USA, which was drafted under the Philadelphia Convention, right, they did not contain anything for the equality in their constitution, but they do contain certain rights which was added later on in the form of Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights is from UK also, but here we are talking about the US Bill of Rights, and the first 10 amendments, first to 10th Amendment acts were introduced into the US Constitution through an amendment which was talking about different types of rights, right to freedom of speech, expression and so on. But still, in those first 10 amendments also, the right to equality was not mentioned. In fact, finally, the right to equality came in what? Right to equality came in with the 14th Amendment Act. So in 14th Amendment Act, they have introduced this concept of right to equality very late, maybe in late 60s or 68 to be perfect. India में ऐसा नहीं. In India, what is the situation? Right from day one, on 26 Jan 1950 only, we had the concept of equality. Right to equality is a complete thing under Article 14 to 18 in Part 3 of the Constitution. That is, the original Constitution itself have the mention about right to equality. So this is the second striking feature when we talk about right to equality. Then, when we talk about that argument is clear. Third thing, or third argument, you can mention this. Let's just see. Then when we talk about the D, that is a A, B, C, D. Okay, this is for 250 words, so we can add more points. So when we talk about this, as far as their right to equality is concerned, their right to equality is equality with the differentiability. Our equality is different. Basically, the point you can write is, in our case, right to equality is much more comprehensive than that of USA. Why? Because USA talks about only one thing, that is, let's say, political equality in the amendment which they have introduced. But in our case, we talk about not only the political equality, but we also talk about economic equality, we also talk about social equality, and so on. So ours is more comprehensive, more broader, right? And more detailed in spirit and essence compared to that counterpart of US. So this could be the another point we can add, that these are the distinguishing feature. Then another distinguishing feature when we talk about, when we are doing the right to equality, Article 14, there we came up with three concepts. You remember, rule of law. Then we have EBL, that is called equality before law, right? And then we have EPL, that is equal protection of law. So we know all these three concepts, but here we will not be able to explain them. Obviously, it's a paper discussion. Otherwise, in regular classroom, we have discussed them. As far as rule of law and the equality before law is concerned, we know that we have taken it by the concept given by Lord Dicey, or we can say we have taken it from UK. And EBL is a negative concept. And the doctrine of EPL, we have told that we have taken it from what? USA. That means USA used the right to equality with what? With respect to equal protection of law, which is a positive concept. But in India, we not only use the positive aspect of equality, but negative aspect of equality as well. We use the EBL also, right? And we use the EPL also. That means both the side. The simple argument is, in India, as far as the equality is concerned, there is a possibility of discrimination. That is, we can have the discrimination between the class, not within the class. So between the class, we can have the discrimination, or that is known as positive discrimination. They also have something called affirmative action, but that is limited to some basic things only. Our positive discrimination is based upon the social conditions, the economic condition, the educational status, right? The employment opportunity and so on. So for that, we can give the passing reference that ours is wider by writing about Article 15, 16, 17 and 18 also. Because no discrimination, here also no discrimination, untouchability and abolition of titles. That means what? No discrimination on the basis of race, religion, in the social status or economic status, or giving the reservation into government jobs and so on, untouchability, title. So ours is what? Ours is the notion of equality which is based upon the socio-historical factor of origin of our country and the diversity. There is more rational. Their equality concept or connotation is more rational. They do also have social security benefits for their people, no doubt about it. But that is not in a sense like this, or broader in a sense like what we follow. So we can say the right to equality what we have actually given to our people is much more broad based in orientation rather than confined to only equal protection of law. So that's why I said, even if you have not read that comparative part between India and US, then also, because when we study the comparative constitution of different countries, there we talk only about three things: legislature, judiciary, and executive. And that's how we compare the constitution. So even if you have done that topic, then also we might not have taken this. But certainly while doing the article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18, we definitely, or you might have read it definitely, or you might have studied definitely, or your teachers might have guided about this particular thing. So if you have that understanding, then also you can answer the question very easily. Is that clear? Great. So this is about the US part. Then when we talk about the next question, that is, explain the constitutional provisions under which the legislative councils are established. Right? This is the first part. So again, factual, review the working and the current status of the legislative councils with the suitable illustrations. Again, the question is for 250 words, so we can have ample of point. Now, when we talk about the legislative councils, then first part is seeking an answer for explaining the constitutional provision. That means we have to refer it with respect to constitution. And then second part, that means review the working and the current status of legislative council. That means it will have two components in our answer. Let's try to understand one by one. Now, when we talk about the constitutional provision, then as far as the constitutional provision for this is concerned, then we have opted for a parliamentary form of government. At the union level, we know that. And there is a mandatory condition that at union level, we have a bicameral legislature. That means when we talk about the constitutional position at the union level, when we talk about the parliament or so-called legislature, here it is going to be bicameral. Bicameral means it is going to have two houses. Let's say Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. But though we have opted the similar form of government at the state level also, but this flexibility is given to the state. That is, when we talk about the state legislature, then state legislature can be unicameral also and can be bicameral also. Uni means one house, bicameral means two houses. So when we talk about unicameral, that means only one house, and that is popularly known as legislative assembly, or what we call Vidhan Sabha. When we talk about the bicameral, then other house will come, and that is called legislative council. So basically the legislative councils are nothing but they are the counterpart of, you can say, the upper house at the union level. But it is not mandatory for all the states to have this. Clear? Now, when we talk about the state legislature, the second point or B point we can say, then in the state legislature, the constitutional provision related with the state legislature is dealt under Article 168 to 212 in Part 6 of the Constitution. So that is the constitutional position. Out of that, the one article which is very important is nothing but Article 169, which talks about the creation or abolition of legislative council. So in this Article 169, the mention about the legislative council is given. Now, this is a very traditional question, but why it has been all of a sudden came in UPSC this year? So recently you might be knowing the proposal, or the resolution passed by the West Bengal government, right, which has requested for creating a legislative council. So this you can give the passing reference, or before that the Andhra government. So Andhra Pradesh has a very hodgepodge approach. Initially they had, they abolished, then they request for abolish. Telangana government has requested. So basically this was the most recent example, we can say, where West Bengal government passed a resolution to have the legislative council. So that part we'll see how the resolution is passed, how the things can be taken up and so on. So इसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे, right? But this is in the backgrounder, or you can mention as a passing reference. Now, as of now, if you have to see, then this point also you can add that currently there are only 6 states which are having legislative council. Initially 7. J&K was also there, but with the reorganization of J&K, it has been abolished. So when we talk about Article 169, it talks about the creation or abolition of legislative council in the state. And when we are dealing with this topic in regular class, we have discussed also the detailed process. But here, just they are asking the constitutional provision under which the legislative council are established. That means we have to write 3-4 lines about their establishment. So it's very simple. When we talk about this, then under Article 169, it is the parliament. Ultimately, the parliament is the one which is empowered to do so. Right? Empowered for what? Either creation or so-called establishment or abolition. So the final power is there with the parliament. But there is a condition. On the request made by the concerned state legislature. That means what? The state legislature must make a request to the parliament for creating a legislative council or abolishing a legislative council which is existing in the states. So here what state legislature they have to do? They have to pass a resolution seeking the creation or establishment or abolition by a special majority. So when we say special majority, this majority is greater than 2/3 of present and voting, plus it must be greater than absolute majority. Absolute majority means greater than half of total plus 1. So you have studied about this majority. This is the majority what is needed to pass that resolution, and once it is passed, then it goes to the parliament. And parliament has to be passed by simple majority. So when we talk about simple majority, it can be passed by greater than half of present and voting plus 1 in both the houses. So it's just like ordinary majority, and here if one house rejects the thing, then also it comes to an end. So both the houses must pass and goes to the president and then assented, and the creation or abolition will come into place. So ultimately the power is there with the. So in that point we can mention about this creation part as far as the legislative council are concerned, or how they are established. So this is the way they are established. But the main part which we need to answer is nothing but the review the working and the current status of the legislative councils with the suitable illustrations. So illustrations we can give about the West Bengal or currently the 6 states and have so on. Now let's try to see the working or why most of the states do not have. So when we talk about why most of the states do not have, for that we can take this example. What example? Example of working. So when we say working of the legislative council, they are supposed to work as a second house. So as far as their effective working is concerned, basically their importance is what? First, they must act as a second house or a revisory house. This was the idea for which they were created. Why revisory house? Because the popular house means here the legislative assembly may pass certain decisions in haste or in a hurried manner. So it is the legislative council which can revise that decision, and they can control the hasteness or the hurried manner of passing a legislation by the state assembly, that is legislative assembly. That was the one idea. Second, when we talk about, they were established with the objective that it will give the representation to the people from different walks or expertise of life. So that their experience, their experience can be utilized used in making the policies or making the laws. So this was the idea. How to substantiate that? For that you can mention additional 1 or 2 line that here the people who come into legislative council are nothing but they are from the, let's say, most of them are from the nomination only, from the local bodies. So local body, when we talk about, that is PRIs or the urban local bodies. Then we talk about the representation from the teachers, representation from the students fraternity. Okay, so teachers, students, plus there would be representation or nomination by the governors from the people who belong to art, literature, social services, science, cooperative societies, and so on. That means legislative councils are the one which are the mostly nominated or indirectly elected body only. Representation from the teaching community, from the student fraternity, from the MPs and MLAs of the legislative assembly or constituency there, and then the local body representatives plus these few. Now basically the idea was nothing but here the B part is this representation. So here we can say representation, let's say C part, that from the local bodies also. So how the local bodies representation can be maintained? By this particular clause. Then from teaching community, literate people, students, and the persons who are eminent in field of art, literature, social sciences, social services, sciences, or cooperative movements, they can be brought into the what? Legislative council, so that their experience can be utilized for making the laws. Or we can say these are the people, D point, these are the people who don't want to contest the direct election or don't want to reach the corridors of state legislatures by contesting in direct election, or which is very cumbersome, a lot of money, muscle and unethical things are used there, so they don't want to, but their views are necessary for the effective functioning. That's why they must be nominated by the governor, or they must be representing the teaching or the student fraternity and so on. So the idea was good, but problem is what? Problem is its functioning. So when we talk about this functioning, this is what the question is demanding, that explain the working or review the working and the current status. So when we talk about the working, then here, as far as the working is concerned, now though we have done that in detail, here you can see that when we talk about the passage of various legislation or bills, then at the union level, Rajya Sabha had some special power also. Article 61, Article 249, Article 312, these are special powers of Rajya Sabha. But in states, legislative council do not have any special power. That means out of the bills, let it be the ordinary bill, let it be the money bill, let it be the finance bill, constitutional bill cannot be introduced at the state level. So all these bills, out of this only ordinary bill can be introduced in legislative council. Rest all the bills can be introduced only in legislative assembly. But even if ordinary bill is introduced in legislative council, it is passed by legislative council and sent back to legislative assembly. Then legislative assembly can pass the bill, or they have a power to reject the bill. And if they have rejected the bill will come to an end. No provision of joint sitting and all those things are there as far as the legislative council are concerned. So that's why this is the one problem. Now, second, other bills can be, that means all these three bills can be introduced in Legislative Assembly. So if it is introduced in Legislative Assembly and passed by requisite majority, then it goes to Legislative Council. Now, Legislative Council have very limited or restricted options. They cannot reject first of all. Even if they reject, then also it is going to get back to Legislative Assembly. Maximum they can do is they can withhold the bill for 120 days. That is 90 days in the first round and 30 days in the second round. So this process you know. That means, what is the conclusion? They cannot deny the bill. Only they can do what? They can delay the bill. So in one line you can write that only they can delay the bill. Right? So there if you see, the effective power is not there only as far as the Legislative Council is concerned, as good as when we say Rajya Sabha. So this is the one problem with the working. Another problem with the working is what? Another problem is the working. The Legislative Council, which was supposed to be a revisory house, right, actually became an accommodative house or a retirement home kind of thing. That means what? That means, first of all, it is a house where those people who are not able to win the Legislative Assembly elections, they had been parked into the Legislative Council through the nomination and so on. So rather than, becoming a revisory house, they had become the accommodative house. The members who are nominated in the Legislative Council on the party lines, rather than speaking their views or expressing their views openly, they have started, speaking on the party lines. So it becomes a party pocket borrow kind of thing, a parking lot for those regional political parties. And if they have majority, and they are from opposition, so they will try to obstruct the bill and all those things or delay the bill. So rather than facilitating the functioning, they had started disrupting or delaying the bills unnecessarily. And that's why, see, most of the states, 22 states in India, do not have the Legislative Council. Though recently the West Bengal government has proposed or passed a resolution for that, but same thing happened with the Andhra also. Mr. Reddy Sahab, Jagan Mohan Reddy Sahab, once he introduced that, a resolution for removal of it, and when he came in power, his members got majority in the Legislative Council, then he had revoked that notification. So something like, it is used like a toss or a football depending upon the one's interest and so on. So like that, you can mention about the working as well as the current status of the Legislative Council. Is that clear? Yes? Perfect. Now, let's move on to the next question. So, last question for the day. When we talk about this, then this is related with the departmentally related parliamentary standing committees. Basically, DRPSCs or DRSCs, what we call. So, again, a factual basis. Departmentally related parliamentary standing committees keep the administration on its toes, okay, and inspire the reverence for a parliamentary control. Evaluate the working of such committees with suitable examples. So, जहां तक ये है question, this particular question is related. Basically, this is related with the standing committees. तो थोड़ा सा आप brief दे सकते हैं, 250 word का है. You can write the introduction also, that what exactly this question is demanding. So here we can say that first of all mention about the parliamentary committee, and when we talk about the parliamentary committee, in the intro para you can talk about the typologies also, that there are standing committees. When we say standing, permanent in nature, and other is the ad hoc ones, that is temporary in nature. Once the job is over, the committee is over, like inquiry committee, investigation committee, or joint parliamentary committee, JPC. This example you can give. And when we talk about standing, they are permanent, means their member changes, but that committee remains, like financial committees like public account committee, estimate committee, or committee on public sector undertakings, like that, plus many other, housekeeping committee, advisory committee, except select committee. Select committee is also consists of parliamentarians only, but it is not a parliamentary committee because of certain conditions. Anyways, so departmentally related standing committees are nothing but part of standing committees. And after writing this intro, then introduce the DRPSCs, that is called Departmentally Related Parliamentary Standing Committees. So second para of your answer should comprise of a brief introduction about DRPSCs. So when we talk about the DRPSCs, that means here the origin of DRPSCs can be traced back. If you remember, it's fine. If not, no problem. Late 80s, to be exact in 1989, when 3 such committees were introduced in the Department of Agriculture or Ministry of Agriculture, Environment and Ecology, and Ministry of Science and Technology, just to review their work. And since it has been found very fruitful, then it was extended to almost all the department, and by 1993 we had 17 DRPSCs, with each having members 45. The members are from both the houses, 13 from Lok Sabha, 15 from Rajya Sabha. So 2:1 representation is ensured, which is another characteristics or feature of departmentally related standing committee. It has been increased in 2003, and from 2004 onwards, we have now 24 DRPSCs. But the membership is reduced because we have increased the number. So 31 members are there now in the ratio of 21:10, that is 2:1, 21 from Lok Sabha and 10 from Rajya Sabha. So ये basic introduction आप दे सकते हैं, out of which 16:8 division is there. 16 committees chairman are from Lok Sabha, appointed by the Speaker. 8 committees chairman are from Rajya Sabha. They are appointed by the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So like that, they are there. Now what they do? Basically, departmentally related standing committees are the one which are there to scrutinize the demands which are presented by the various ministries. So when we talk about DRPSCs, then their working is nothing but departmentally related. So where the department comes? When we talk about Government of India, it is having many ministries. So Ministry 1, let's say Home, so Home Ministry, Finance Ministry, Defense Ministry, Health Ministry, and so on. And every ministry will have multiple departments, D1, D2, D3, and so on. These committees are attached here. Attached in the sense, they are given the task of scrutinizing the demands of grant or demands for grants which are made by these ministries. So basically, their role comes in budget session. Now today we have the budget also. So there you'll see, after the general discussion, the House would be adjourned for 4 to 6 weeks. And there, whatever the demands of grant or demands for grant which had been presented by these ministries, they are going to be given to DRPSCs. And these DRPSCs are the one which is going to scrutinize the demand and make a secondary report, which will be presented again after 4 to 6 weeks, and then the parliament will discuss about them. So if any irregularities, mismatch, or any other kind of thing has been found, that would be highlighted by this DRPSC. So that's one of the effective mechanism of exercising the financial control over the executive. So I hope you got the idea. This is what we have to mention in the, we can say, first part. Then it keeps the administration on its toes and, especially help or, have a reverence as far as the parliamentary control is concerned. So that's how they exercise or help in exercising the parliamentary control, by scrutinizing those demands for grants. However, evaluate the working of such committees with the suitable examples when we talk about. So when we talk about these committees, then many examples are there, not very recent, but from the past also, as I have mentioned you earlier also, unearthing the various financial scams, highlighting the financial irregularities which had been there in including the 2G spectrum or, the Colgate case, allocation case. There we can relate the example or, magnificent working of these committees. But the problem is, there is nothing harm in having the working of this committee, but still there are certain problems. Now when we talk about the working of these committees, then because of the, again, government which is there in the majority, the most of the members are there who are from the ruling side. And when most of the members are there on the ruling side, definitely the impartial functioning is something what is questionable. That is the one thing. Second thing, lack of resources or availability of resources. So lack of adequate resources for these committees to function. right? Time paucity. DRPSCs are not allowed to take more time, so time paucity is there. In limited time, they have to. Then, lack of expertise, opinion, or expert guidance. Okay. This could be the one function we can say. Plus, they are not able to, cover up all the demands for grants. Selective demands they scrutinize. Again, with the limited resources, limited time, and lack of expertise opinion, though they can take the expertise opinion, but these are some of the, we can say, loopholes which are there, which needs to be plugged out. Otherwise, we can say their overall effectiveness in exercising the parliamentary control is justifiable, and that's why they are functioning, and their number had also been increased in the past. All right. So I guess in a nutshell, we have discussed about the various questions, different dimensions. But as I've told you, this is not the only thing what we have to remember, or this is not the only thing which could be an answer. There could be different answers also for this, depend upon the understanding. But certainly this discussion will definitely help you in at least those students who are going to write the exam later. They must understand that what is the demand of the question, how the points has to be generated, how much scope is there as far as the word limit is concerned. So we have to consolidate our argument into limited words and so on. These things you need to take up. Okay, perfect. So that's all from my end as far as the today's discussion is concerned. Thanks a million for watching this particular video. Looking forward to see you very soon for the next discussion or the analysis. Till then, all the best. Take care of health. Have a great day. Bye-bye.